You can almost feel the smooth, cool marble of a well as you lean over to draw a bucket. The water is clear, spring-fed, and you can smell the fresh, clean scent of the earth. This is the water that Hippocrates would have approved of, the kind that the Greeks believed was a tonic for the body and the mind. It's not a river that has been tamed by an empire. It's a natural spring, revered and protected, a quiet gift from the earth itself. The emphasis here is on the natural, the simple, and the pure. The Greeks were great thinkers, but they were also great observers. And they knew that sometimes the best solution is the one that's already there, waiting to be found. Hey guys! Tonight we're taking a journey back in time, all the way to a place where the simple act of getting a drink of water was a life or death gamble. Imagine you're living thousands of years ago. The sun is hot, the air is thick with dust, and a deep, gnawing thirst has settled in your throat. You can't just stroll to the fridge and grab a cold bottle. There's no faucet, no water fountain, no pristine mountain spring conveniently located at the end of your block. You probably wouldn't last long, to be honest. A week. Maybe 2. Let's just say your body's immune system, which is used to modern, sanitized living, would probably file for divorce from your gastrointestinal tract after the first dodgy sip. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling up to it, drop a comment with where you are and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to see where this sleepy story finds its listeners tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you drift off, you can almost feel the gentle hum of philosophical debate in the air. The Greeks may not have built monuments to water, but they built something arguably more important, a philosophical framework that connected the purity of the world to the purity of the body. They gave us the idea that what we consume has a direct and profound effect on our health, a concept that is so fundamental to our modern world that we don't even think about it. The simple Hippocratic sleeve was the first medical filter, a quiet, humble beginning to a long journey of understanding. And for tonight, you can rest easy, knowing that a simple piece of cloth and a few good ideas were enough to change the world. You're a shepherd, a farmer, a potter. It's a sweltering afternoon, and the sun hangs like a brazen eye in the sky, beating down on the clay soil you call home. The day's work has left a fine film of red dust on your skin, and your muscles ache with a slow, heavy fatigue. The worst part, though, is the feeling in your mouth dry and papery, a sensation that whispers of an unquenchable need. The local river is your lifeblood, the reason your village exists at all. It's the source of everything, from the clay you use to make pots to the silt that enriches the fields. But you know better than to trust it, not implicitly. The water, a murky brown ribbon winding through the landscape, is a mirror to your world, beautiful but dangerous, full of unseen perils. You've heard the stories since you were a child, tales of sickness that sweeps through the village after a heavy rain, when the river swells and brings with it the secrets of the upstream lands. You know that a careless drink could lead to days of agonizing cramps, fever, and a weakness so profound it could steal your life in a whisper. The threat is a constant, low-level thrum of anxiety, a shadow cast over every chore and every meal. The gentle, salty breeze of the Aegean Sea recedes, and the sharp, logical debates of Greek philosophers fade into a low murmur. A new atmosphere settles in, thick with the scent of spices, incense, and the humid, verdant air of a land far to the east. You find yourself in the bustling, colorful world of ancient India, a world where the concept of wellness isn't just about avoiding sickness, but about living in a state of perfect harmony with your body and the universe. The Roman obsession was with brute force. The Greek obsession was with pure reason. But here, the approach to water is something else entirely. It's a blend of spiritual ritual and practical earthly wisdom. You take a large, unglazed clay pot and begin the long, dusty walk toward the riverbank. Your feet, calloused and thick, know the path by heart. The air is still, and the only sounds are the rhythmic crunch of your sandals on the dirt and the distant bleating of sheep. You pass by other villagers, some carrying reeds for weaving, others with tools for tilling. The shared hardship creates an unspoken bond, a communal understanding of the world's simple, unyielding rules. Arriving at the river, you pause. The water is a thick, soupy mess today, probably from recent rains up in the hills. Bits of plant matter float on the surface, and the current carries a hazy sediment that makes it impossible to see more than a few inches deep. You know that somewhere in that cloudy water, invisible to the naked eye, are things that could make you gravely ill. Things your village has no name for, but whose effects they know all too well. You are a student of Ayurveda, the ancient system of medicine and holistic wellness that has been passed down for thousands of years. Your life isn't just about survival. It's about balance. Every action, every thought, every sip of water is a step toward achieving a state of health that feels less like a temporary fix and more like a permanent, peaceful equilibrium. You don't just drink water to quench your thirst. You drink it to cleanse your body, to balance your energies, to honor a tradition that sees the human body as a microcosm of the entire universe. You don't just dip your pot in. That would be a fool's errand. Instead, you wade carefully into the shallows, disturbing the least amount of sediment possible, and scoop the water from a spot where the current seems to run a little cleaner. The liquid you collect is still a far cry from clear. It's the color of weak tea, a grim promise of what's to come. You trudge back to your home, the heavy pot digging into your shoulder, the promise of a refreshing drink a long way off. This is where the real work begins, the work that turns a potential poison into a life-sustaining necessity. The common historical fact is that the people of ancient India were among the first to utilize the natural antibacterial properties of copper for water purification. You, as a student, have been taught that copper is not just a metal. It is an element with a sacred and purifying energy. You would take your drinking water from a well, a river, or a large public cistern, and instead of boiling it or running it through a complex filter, you would pour it into a large, beautiful copper vessel. This vessel, often polished to a brilliant reddish gold shine, wasn't just a container, it was a tool of wellness. The water would sit in this vessel overnight, a quiet, unseen transformation happening within its gleaming walls. You know that by morning, the water is not only safe to drink, but it has been infused with the healing energy of the copper itself. You've heard stories of a traveling merchant who tried to sell iron pots for water, claiming they were stronger. The whole village laughed at him. Iron is for tools, they'd say. Copper is for life. The first and most reliable method is the one your grandmother taught you. It's a simple truth, passed down through generations. You build a fire, a small, efficient thing of dry wood and kindling, and place the pot of muddy water directly into the flames. The process is slow. You sit on your haunches, mesmerized by the hypnotic dance of the firelight. You watch as small bubbles begin to form on the bottom of the pot, gradually growing larger, and then a rolling boil. The water churns and steams, and the impurities you couldn't see are, you hope, being undone. This is the common historical fact you probably learned in a history class. The kind of thing that seems obvious now. Boiling water to kill off the bad stuff. It's so simple, so intuitive. You have to wonder if it was a moment of pure genius or just a happy accident. But the secret wasn't just in the copper. The obscure detail of this ancient practice is the specific herbs and plants that were sometimes added to the water before it was left to sit. You, as a student of Ayurveda, are taught to add a small sprig of Tulsi holy basil or a few leaves of neem, a tree known for its medicinal properties, to the copper pot. You're told that these plants, in combination with the copper, work to further purify the water and add their own unique healing properties. This wasn't just about killing off the bad stuff, it was about adding in the good stuff. It was a proactive approach to health, a way of using nature to not just survive, but to thrive. You can't help but think about how much easier this is than building a fire every night. You just fill a pot, throw in some herbs, and let the universe do its work. It's like the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it wellness plan. You could probably sell this in a modern-day health store for a ridiculous price, and people would buy it without a second thought. While the water boils, you begin the second, more intricate process, one that serves a different purpose. You take a clean, woven basket and fill it with several layers of fine sand, charcoal from an old fire pit, and some clean gravel. You take a piece of finely woven linen, the best you have, and drape it over a smaller clay pot. This is the little-known detail, and the one that probably doesn't make it into the textbooks. This filtering process is not about killing the unseen evils. It's about making the water palatable. It's about removing the taste of earth and decay, the tiny bits of plant matter and dirt that still float in the boiled liquid. You carefully pour the boiled water, now slightly cooled, into your makeshift filter. The water drips through the layers of sand and charcoal, emerging on the other side into the waiting pot as something entirely different. It's cleaner. It's still warm, but the heavy, earthy taste is gone, replaced by a neutral flavor that is just water. This practice of using copper and herbs wasn't just a random act. It was based on a sophisticated, if not strictly scientific, understanding of the world. The Ayurveda texts, like the Sushruta Samhita, one of the foundational texts of Indian medicine, mention these methods. They describe the process of heating water and letting it cool, the use of sand and gravel filters, and the benefits of storing water in copper vessels. It's a remarkable parallel to the methods you saw in your own village, but with a deeper, more spiritual layer. They understood that water wasn't just a substance, it was a living thing, and it had to be treated with respect. This was the first attempt to marry the practical needs of survival with the philosophical needs of a spiritual life. It's a testament to the fact that you can find wisdom in a pot of water, a truth that transcends cultures and centuries. The relief is physical, a deep exhale that you didn't know you were holding. You've done it. You've completed the daily ritual of survival, a ritual that every member of your community understands and respects. But as you take that first glorious sip, you can't help but think about how they figured this out in the first place. Did one person, one day, notice that the water from a hot spring was less likely to make them sick? Did they observe that water seeping through layers of sand and rock was clearer and tasted better? Historians still debate whether these early methods were discovered through deliberate experimentation or by pure chance and observation over countless generations of trial and error. Was it a scientist's insight or a shaman's ritual? The answer, lost to the annals of unwritten history, probably lies somewhere in between. Now, for the academic debate. Historians still debate whether the use of copper was based on a genuine, albeit unarticulated, understanding of its antimicrobial properties, or if it was simply a happy coincidence rooted in cultural and spiritual beliefs. Did the ancient Indians understand that copper ions were damaging the cell walls of bacteria? Or did they simply observe that people who drank from copper pots got sick less often and attribute it to the divine properties of the metal? It's a fascinating question. The results were the same: cleaner water and healthier people. But the reason for those results is a quiet point of contention. Some scholars argue that it's a perfect example of a pre-scientific society discovering a scientific truth through empirical observation. Others contend that the spiritual significance of copper and the emphasis on ritual played a more dominant role. It's a good example of how the line between science and faith can sometimes be blurred, especially when the outcome is so positive. The water, and still warm from the fire, goes down easy, soothing the parched lining of your throat. It's not a cold, refreshing drink from the fridge, but it is life. It is the culmination of hard work, of ancient wisdom, of a silent war waged against a microscopic enemy. You think about your friends in the village, all doing the same thing at this very moment. It's a collective sigh of relief, a shared moment of triumph over a relentless world. You might think, what's the big deal? Just boil some water. And you'd be right, in a way. But for them, it wasn't just a chore, it was a skill, an art form, a way of life that separated the thriving from the sick. And you, sitting there in your comfortable, modern home, are a beneficiary of that ancient, humble ingenuity. The day is winding down. The sun is setting, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples, and the sounds of the village are fading into a gentle hum. You've survived another day. A small victory won with a fire, a pot, and a little bit of common sense passed down through time. You can rest easy now, knowing that for tonight, at least, your thirst is quenched. As you sit in a quiet courtyard, the warm air heavy with the scent of jasmine, you take a sip from your copper cup. The water is cool, clean, and has a subtle, almost mineral-like taste that is both refreshing and revitalizing. You can feel the coolness of the water spreading through your body, a quiet, soothing energy that calms your mind and settles your spirit. This isn't just about survival, it's about a conscious act of self-care. It's about a connection to the world around you, a connection that is made with every sip. You're not just drinking water, you're participating in a ritual, a tradition, a way of life that has endured for millennia. The small fire you built has died down to a few glowing embers, a quiet, orange-red heartbeat in the gathering gloom. The pot is now sitting on a flat stone, radiating a faint warmth into the cooling air. You've had your drink, but the day's task isn't over. The rest of the purified water must be stored carefully, because you won't always have the time or the wood to build a fire. You pour the water from the filtering pot into a larger sealed ceramic jar, a vessel specifically designed for the precious liquid. This is the simple, elegant solution to a complex problem. You didn't just make a glass of water, you made a supply. You're thinking ahead, a necessary skill in a world that doesn't tolerate improvisation. The ability to plan for the future, to anticipate a day when the river might be too swollen or your energy too low, is what separates you from the animals. The world outside is full of noise and chaos. But here, in this quiet moment, there is only peace. The Romans' power and the Greeks' logic are far away. Here, the focus is on the simple, elegant truth of the body and the world around it. It's a reminder that sometimes the most profound wisdom isn't found in a massive aqueduct or a dense philosophical text, but in a simple copper pot and a few leaves of a holy plant. It's a quiet truth that has been waiting for you. A truth that whispers, just be still, and let nature do its work. And as the night deepens, you can feel the quiet hum of that ancient wisdom, a soothing, calming presence that will carry you into a peaceful slumber. You have a secret weapon, one that's always available and costs you nothing the sun. On days when you are too busy in the fields to make a fire, you use a different method, one that feels less like a chore and more like a quiet act of faith. You take the clearest water you can find from the river, carefully skimming the surface with a small gourd, and you pour it into a few of your smaller, thinner clay jars. These jars are unique. They're less porous than the others and have a smoother interior, and you clean them meticulously. You place them on the sun-baked ground, where the light can hit them unimpeded. You let them sit there for a day, 2 days even, absorbing the energy of the relentless sun. The heat of the day, makes things clean. It dries the grain, it bakes the clay, it makes the earth hard. It must, you reason, have a similar effect on the water. It's a method you use when you have time, when you can be patient. It's not as quick as the fire, but it's a tool in your arsenal. A different kind of alchemy. The spiritual calm of ancient India, the scent of tulsi, and the quiet gleam of copper fade into a new sensation. A crisp, academic air fills your lungs, and the rhythmic sound of water being filtered gives way to the low murmur of scientific inquiry. You are no longer a student of holistic wellness, but a keen observer in a world where people are beginning to understand the why behind their methods. We're going to dive deep into a subject we've only touched on before, the pure, unadulterated chemistry of cleansing. Your journey so far has been a grand tour of practical wisdom, but now we're going to see the dawn of a new kind of thinking, the moment when a simple trick becomes a scientific principle. This reliance on fire, sand, and sun wasn't unique to your village. It was a universal language of survival. Throughout time, people across different civilizations, from the Mesopotamian plains to the bustling Indus Valley, stumbled upon these same basic principles. The common historical fact is that boiling was a widespread and instinctive solution, but it was often paired with other physical and chemical tricks. For example, ancient texts from both Greece and India talk about settling water, using simple clay pots to allow heavy particles to sink to the bottom before pouring off the top. Cleaner layer. This process, known as decantation, was a fundamental step. It was a kind of proto-science, a simple observation that a little patience could make a big difference. You can't help but chuckle as you think about how this would be the world's most frustrating do-it-yourself project today. Step 1, patiently wait for a full day. Step 2, pray. It's a level of commitment to a glass of water that we've completely forgotten. You are a scholar in the ancient world, maybe in Persia or even back in Roman times, but with a new curiosity. The sun is warm, and you're not by a river or a well, but in a small, well-organized workshop. You have a pot of dirty, cloudy water before you. The kind of water you've seen 1,000 times. But this time, you're not just going to boil it or wait for it to settle. You're going to do something deliberate. Something you've learned from a mix of ancient texts and practical observation. You've heard whispers, remember, of a substance used by the Egyptians to make their muddy river water clear. It's that same substance alum, a mineral salt. You have a small crystalline lump of it, a shimmering, almost translucent rock that you hold in your hand. It's hard to believe this unassuming little rock could hold so much power. It's the kind of thing you'd probably mistake for a fancy paperweight today, but in this world, it's the key to a better, healthier life. But the real magic, the thing that gave the water its neutral, almost sweet taste, was the charcoal. You, like many before you, stumbled upon this secret quite by accident. You noticed that water you filtered through a pile of burnt wood and ash was not only clearer, but also tasted better. This isn't just about removing visible dirt. It's about what charcoal does on a microscopic level. It's porous. It's full of tiny holes and nooks, like a miniature volcanic sponge. These nooks and crannies trap all sorts of things, the lingering flavors of rotting leaves, the heavy mineral tastes, and even some of the invisible nasties that you can't see. You don't know the word adsorption, but you know the effect. It's the obscure detail, the forgotten art of your ancestors. You've just created the world's first ever, all-natural, completely manual filter pitcher, minus the plastic. You're basically a high-tech cave person. The common historical fact is that the use of alum for water purification was a widespread practice across many ancient civilizations. From Egypt and Rome to China and India, people discovered that this natural mineral, when crushed into a fine powder and added to turbid water, had a miraculous effect. The water, which was once a swirling, muddy mess, would suddenly begin to clear. The tiny particles of clay and silt, which were once suspended in the water, would clump together and sink to the bottom in a matter of hours, not weeks. This process, which we now know as coagulation, was a game changer. It was the original quick fix for dirty water, the ancient equivalent of a water purifier that works in minutes. You're watching the magic happen in real time, the cloudy water becoming a clear, clean liquid right before your eyes. It's a moment of quiet, intellectual triumph, a feeling that you've finally seen the gears of the universe turning. Just a little bit. The use of charcoal for purifying water dates back thousands of years. The Egyptians used it, the Indians used it, and ancient Romans probably used it too. It was a simple, elegant solution to a complex problem, and it was a solution that was stumbled upon independently by different cultures all over the world. But here's an interesting point of contention. Historians still debate whether the use of charcoal in filtration was originally for health benefits or purely for taste. Was the goal to remove the invisible threats, or was it simply to make the water more pleasant to drink? The answer is likely both, but it's a fun thought experiment. Did the person who first added charcoal to their filter do so out of a desire for a healthier drink? Or were they just tired of their water tasting like a swamp? It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the human priorities of the past. Maybe they weren't thinking about germs at all, but about how to make a cup of tea that didn't taste like mud. We'll never know for sure. But the results were the same, cleaner, safer water. But how did it work? This is where the obscure detail comes in, the tiny, fascinating secret that you're just now beginning to understand. The key is in the charge. The tiny clay particles floating in the water all have a negative electrical charge. Because they are all the same charge, they repel each other, keeping them suspended and making the water cloudy. You can think of it as a bunch of tiny magnets that are all trying to push each other away. Alum, specifically the aluminum sulfate in it, has a positive charge. When you add it to the water, the positively charged alum is like a popular kid at a party who gets everyone to hang out together. It attracts all those negatively charged particles, neutralizing their repulsion and causing them to clump together into larger, heavier masses. These new, bigger clumps, called flock, are too heavy to stay suspended, and they sink to the bottom. It's a simple, elegant chemical reaction, and you're one of the first people to really understand it, even without the modern words to describe it. This isn't just a trick anymore, it's a profound insight into the fundamental properties of the universe. It's a classic example of they knew what it did, but not why it did it. and you're on the cusp of figuring out the why. And the sun. You check on your jars. The day is reaching its peak, and the water is warm to the touch. You've heard from a traveling merchant that people in the faraway lands of the East do this with great ceremony, believing the sun's rays infuse the water with a purifying energy. It's not just a physical process, it's a spiritual one. You're not so sure about the spiritual part, but you know that something happens in those jars. After a day or two, the water seems lighter, clearer. You don't know that the sun's ultraviolet rays are damaging the DNA of microorganisms, effectively sterilizing the water. You don't need to. You just need to know that when you have no other options, the sun is a faithful and reliable partner in survival. It's a method that is still used today in developing countries, a testament to its simple and effective power. It is, in a way, the original passive solar technology. It's a quiet form of technological brilliance that relies on observing the world around you and using what you have. No elaborate machines, no complex rituals, just patience and a clear container. You sit for a while watching the flock settle. The bottom of the pot is now covered in a thick layer of sediment, and the water above is crystal clear. It has an almost pristine, untouched quality to it. This is the water you've been looking for. This is the water that is not just free of visible dirt, but also free of the things that gave it that earthy taste. It's water that has been fundamentally changed by a simple act of chemistry. It's a far cry from the long, patient waiting game of decantation. And it's a different kind of magic than the spiritual cleanse of the copper pot. This is a cold, hard, logical solution to a physical problem. It's a bit like finding out that the secret to a good pizza isn't a complex ritual, but just the right amount of salt. It's a simple truth that changes everything. You think about the countless hours your ancestors must have spent, staring into a pot of water, watching it boil, or looking at a jar in the sun, waiting. The world was not instant, not like the tap you turn on today. Every sip was earned, every drink a small victory. There were no shortcuts, no instant fixes. You had to work for it. You had to have a deep respect for the natural world and its rhythms. You had to understand that a river, while a source of life, was also a source of great danger. You had to learn to tame it, to purify it, to make it safe for yourself and your family. And you did it not with science and technology as we know it, but with common sense, observation, and a healthy dose of fear. Now, for the academic debate. Historians still debate whether the full-scale implications of alum as a disinfectant were understood by the ancients. Did they know that coagulation, by removing the suspended particles, was also removing a huge percentage of the bacteria and parasites that hid among them? Or did they just see the clearer water and the reduced sickness as a happy unintended consequence of making the water look better? The evidence suggests that for a long time, the focus was on the aesthetic and taste benefits, with the health benefits being a pleasant side effect. But as time went on and people began to make more careful observations, the connection became clearer. This is a fascinating gray area in the history of science. The place where an observation becomes a theory, and a theory becomes a fact. It's the slow, painful process of human knowledge, the kind of thing that makes you want to fast forward a few thousand years just to tell them, you're on the right track. The thought of all that effort just for a glass of water is humbling. Today, you get frustrated if your coffee maker takes more than 5 minutes, let alone having to build a fire and a filter just to stay hydrated. It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? The quiet hum of your modern life is the echo of 1,000 ancient fires, 1,000,000 pots of water boiled, and countless jars left out in the sun. The simplicity of these methods is their genius. They are robust, they are elegant, and they worked. They laid the foundation for everything that came after. All the great aqueducts and filtration plants and municipal water systems, they were the first, tentative steps on a long journey to the clean. Safe water we take for granted. It's a journey you're just starting. As the night deepens, you can feel the tiredness settling in your bones, but it's a good kind of tiredness, the kind that comes from a day of hard work and quiet accomplishment. You've done what you needed to do. You're safe for another night. You can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as you've taken a lump of rock and turned a pot of dirty water into something clean and safe. It's a quiet, personal triumph, but it's a victory for all of humanity. It's a moment that bridges the gap between the simple, practical methods of your past life and the complex, scientific understanding of the future. You've just witnessed the birth of modern water treatment. It's a small step, but it's a giant leap for mankind. The knowledge you have now, this deep understanding of a simple chemical process, is a powerful thing. It's the kind of knowledge that can feed cities, save lives, and fundamentally change the way people live. As the sun rises, casting a hazy, golden glow over the land, your mind wanders. You've mastered the art of fire, of sand, of sun. But your world is small. What about those who live by a river so vast, so powerful, it is practically a god? What about the people of the Nile? We're going to leave your small but quiet village and travel far, far away to the land of pyramids and pharaohs, a place where water wasn't just a necessity, but the very foundation of an empire. Your simple clay pot gives way to grand, architectural solutions. You can almost feel the dry, hot wind of the desert on your face, a stark contrast to the thick, humid air of the riverbanks. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across your workshop, you look at the pot of clear water. The surface is still, a mirror reflecting the last vestiges of daylight. You've gone from a person who simply used a method to a person who understands a principle. And that, you realize, is the most profound change of all. The story of water purification isn't just a story about technology. It's a story about the evolution of human thought, the slow and steady march from observation to understanding. And for tonight, you can rest easy, knowing that you've seen the world a little bit more clearly, thanks to a humble lump of alum. You are now in ancient Egypt, a laborer or an artisan, and your life is dictated by the predictable, almost mystical rhythm of the Nile River. Every year, like clockwork, the river swells and overflows its banks, not in a destructive rage, but in a life-giving embrace. It brings with it a thick, dark silt, a fertile mud that turns the arid desert into a lush, green paradise. This annual flood, the inundation, is a blessing. It allows you to grow food, to sustain your family, to pay your taxes to the pharaoh. But it also brings a problem, a colossal empire-sized problem. The water itself is absolutely filthy. It's not just muddy, it's a living soup of organic matter, clay particles, and microscopic mysteries. To drink it directly would be a fool's errand, a quick ticket to the afterlife that you probably aren't ready for. The Nile gives life, but it also contains the potential for death. The quiet, intellectual triumph of chemistry and the profound, scientific principles of coagulation slowly give way to a different, much more visceral reality. A chill wind blows through a narrow, cobbled street, carrying a bouquet of scents that are, to put it mildly, not great. The sharp, acrid smell of wood smoke mixes with the heavy, cloying scent of unwashed bodies, the pungent aroma of animal waste, and a dozen other things you'd rather not think about. The elegant aqueducts of Rome have crumbled into a distant, half-remembered memory. The organized, communal health of the ancient world has dissolved into a chaotic, every-man-for-himself scramble for survival. You are no longer in a world of scholars and engineers, but a world of farmers, blacksmiths, and merchants. A world where the only thing that matters is getting through the day. The Egyptians, being the brilliant and practical people they were, couldn't rely on a tiny fire and a small filter like you did in your old life. They needed a solution on a massive scale, one that could support cities teeming with tens of thousands of people. The common historical fact is that the Egyptians were among the first to develop a systematic approach to water clarification. They built vast reservoirs and cisterns, great stone basins where the floodwaters were collected and held. This was their first line of defense patience on a monumental scale. You'd fill these large basins with the muddy Nile water, and then you'd wait. The heavier particles, the sand and the silt and the bits of plants, would slowly, inexorably settle to the bottom. This process, a refined version of the simple decantation you used before, was the bedrock of their water purification. It wasn't fast. It could take weeks for the water to become even remotely clear, but when it did, a fresh, cleaner layer of water would sit on top, ready for the next step. You are a resident of a bustling medieval town, a place of tightly packed wooden houses, mud-slicked streets, and a general air of, well, filth. The sounds of the city are a constant, grating cacophony, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the shouts of merchants in the marketplace, the distant moans of a sick person. There are no public baths here, no grand fountains spouting clean water from the mountains. The Roman infrastructure, once the pride of the world, has fallen into disrepair. The great stone channels were scavenged for building materials, the lead pipes melted down for coins or ammunition. The knowledge to maintain these complex systems, to understand their subtle gradients and intricate engineering, has been lost to time and chaos. It's a tragic kind of devolution, a kind of technological amnesia that makes you want to go back in time and just tell them, don't tear down the aqueducts. Guys, they're literally the best thing you've got. But you can't, and you're now living in the messy consequences. While the water was settling, you'd walk past a great temple, a monumental structure of polished stone and hieroglyphs. On the walls, you see carvings of gods, symbols of life and death and eternity. And in a quiet corner, you might notice a curious inscription. It's a series of drawings and symbols, a kind of recipe. This is the obscure detail that shows the depth of their knowledge. The Egyptians, you see, were not just builders and farmers, they were chemists, alchemists in their own way. They understood that you could make the settling process faster, more efficient. They would take a substance called alum, a mineral salt they found in the desert oases. Alum, when added to the muddy water, acts like a magnet for all the tiny, suspended particles. It would grab onto them, clump them together, and make them heavy enough to sink to the bottom much faster. It's a process we call coagulation today, and it was a game changer. They weren't just waiting for gravity to do its work, they were giving it a nudge, a little scientific help. You've essentially just gone from a guy with a stick and a fire to a certified water treatment specialist with a degree from the University of Ancient Alexandria. Your primary source of water is a communal well in the center of the town. You're standing in line, a large, heavy wooden bucket in your hand, waiting for your turn. The air around the well is thick with the buzz of flies, and the well itself is surrounded by a low stone wall that's stained with 1,000 different kinds of grime. You can't help but notice that the well is just a stone's throw from the town's communal latrine pit, a festering hole in the ground that is the source of much of the town's ambience. The two vital points of a person's daily life, the source of their water and the disposal of their waste, are in disturbingly close proximity. This is the common historical fact of the Middle Ages, a profound lack of sanitation and a casual, dangerous disregard for the separation of clean water from contaminated waste. They weren't stupid, of course. They just didn't understand the microscopic connections that we now take for granted. They knew that bad water could make you sick, but they didn't have the vocabulary to understand why. So the well and the latrine lived in a kind of dangerous, unholy symbiosis, a fact that makes you cringe and wonder how anyone ever made it past the age of 30. It was a literal game of chance every time you got a drink of water, a kind of biological Russian roulette with a much higher chance of losing. The use of alum was a hidden secret, a bit of arcane knowledge passed down through generations of temple priests and royal engineers. They also used another method, which seems almost too simple to be true. They would take a piece of cloth, usually a fine linen, and filter the water through it. But this wasn't just a simple filter like your charcoal basket. This was often the final step, designed to remove any lingering, visible particles that might have escaped the coagulation and settling process. They also had a more elaborate version of this. You would find these large, funnel-shaped clay pots, often lined with a thin layer of sand and gravel, similar to your own. But these were much larger, designed to handle a larger volume of water. They were the world's first large-scale filters, a testament to the fact that size and scale are just as important as the method itself. But you have a secret, a very important obscure detail that kept you and your family a little safer than the rest of the town. You don't drink the water, well, not straight from the well, anyway. You drink ale, not the strong, potent stuff we think of today, but a weak, watery brew that was a staple of the medieval diet. The logic behind this is brilliantly simple. The brewing process, which involved boiling the water, purified it. The heat killed off the invisible nasties that lurked in the well water. The process of fermentation also helped, and the small amount of alcohol in the ale acted as a further disinfectant. It was a practical, if slightly inebriating, solution to a major public health crisis. You can almost see the humor in it. The water's trying to kill me, so I guess I'll just get a little tipsy all day to stay alive. It's a modern thought, of course, but the logic was sound. This weak ale, known as small beer, was drunk by everyone, from children to the elderly, because it was the safest thing to drink. You can almost taste the grainy, slightly sweet flavor of the ale, a constant companion to every meal. It was a part of daily life, a necessary evil that kept the population from succumbing to widespread disease. You have to admit, it's a pretty clever workaround, even if it does sound like a terrible day at the office. This focus on clean water was not just about health, it was about power and control. A pharaoh who could provide clean, safe water to his people was a pharaoh who could maintain a stable, healthy workforce. A healthy workforce was a productive workforce, and a productive workforce could build more pyramids, fight more wars, and keep the empire running smoothly. Clean water was the silent, unseen engine of ancient Egypt. The fact that the most brilliant engineers of the time were not just building pyramids, but also designing reservoirs and water treatment systems, is a testament to the importance of the humble glass of water. It's a historical detail that's often overlooked. A story buried beneath the weight of monumental stone. This widespread reliance on beer and ale for hydration leads to a fascinating academic debate. Historians still debate whether the decline in public health was a direct result of the lack of sanitation, or if it was exacerbated by a cultural shift away from the Romans' more preventative approach. Did the loss of the aqueducts and the move to local, dirty wells cause the diseases? Or did a cultural blindness to the importance of sanitation contribute to the problem? It's a chicken and egg kind of question. Some scholars argue that the loss of Roman knowledge was the key factor, while others contend that the chaotic, decentralized nature of medieval life made any large-scale sanitation project impossible. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle. A messy confluence of lost knowledge, political chaos, and a general lack of understanding about the invisible world of germs. They knew the effects of dirty water, but they simply couldn't put their finger on the cause. And without that understanding, they couldn't build a better solution. But for all their brilliance, there's still an open question. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians understood the connection between microscopic organisms and disease. Did they know they were killing off bacteria and parasites? Or did they simply see the results fewer people getting sick? Clearer water? A better taste and attribute it to their alchemical knowledge or the favor of the gods? The evidence suggests they were more focused on the visible impurities and the aesthetic qualities of the water. They knew that cloudy water made you sick, and clear water was good. The why was probably less important than the what worked. They weren't thinking about germ theory, they were thinking about common sense and a practical outcome. It's a subtle but important distinction, a reminder that the path to knowledge is often paved with good results, even if the underlying principles are not yet fully understood. As you stand there, your feet sinking into the mud and refuse of the street, you can't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for the Roman Empire, for its grand ambitions and its clean, cool water. This new world is a step backward, a kind of historical reset button. But even in this chaos, humanity finds a way to survive. The small beer in your jug is a testament to that. It's a symbol of ingenuity in the face of squalor, a quiet victory in a world that is constantly trying to beat you down. It's a reminder that even when the grand systems fail, the small human solutions can often save the day. You're not an engineer or a scholar anymore. You're a survivor, a person who has to make do with what they have. And what you have is a town that is both your home and your greatest threat, and a glass of warm, weak beer that is a daily dose of protection. You can't help but think about the sheer scale of it all. You're standing by one of these massive reservoirs, the sun glinting off the surface of the now clear water. The air is warm and still, and you can hear the faint, rhythmic sound of a pulley system, bringing buckets of water up from the reservoir. This is a far cry from your quiet, solitary work at the riverbank. This is an organized, communal effort, a testament to what a large group of people can achieve when faced with a common problem. It's not just a village trying to survive, it's an empire thriving. The water you're about to drink has been through a process that's part art, part science. and part brute force. It's been settled, coagulated with a mineral from a faraway desert, and filtered through a fine linen cloth. And the result is a cool, refreshing sip that tastes of life and the ingenuity of a great civilization. It's not just a drink, it's a taste of history. The sun begins to set, casting long, dark shadows across the crowded street. The air grows cooler, and the sounds of the town begin to quiet down. You've filled your jug, you've had your drink, and you've survived another day. The constant, low-level anxiety that comes from living in a world of dirty water is a part of you now, a quiet hum in the background of your life. But as you settle in for the night, you know that you've done what you can. The small beer has done its work, and for tonight, you are safe. This is the beauty of it, and isn't it? The same basic principles you stumbled upon in your village patience, filtering, and the use of natural substances were refined and scaled up by one of the greatest empires in history. It's the same old tune, just played on a much bigger instrument. It makes you feel a little less small, a little less insignificant. Your struggles were the same struggles of the pharaohs and their people, just on a different scale. The quest for clean water is a universal human story, a thread that connects us all across time and space. And as the day fades into night, you realize that the hum of the city, the distant murmur of the marketplace, is just a larger, more complex version of the quiet hum of your own life. And you're a part of it, a small but important link in a long chain of people who have, and will continue to, find a way to make dirty water safe to drink. The journey continues, and it's time to rest. The faint, sour tang of medieval ale and the muddy streets of your past life begin to recede. A new world looms, not of crumbling empires or spiritual rituals, but of churning factories and smoking chimneys. You are now in the heart of the Industrial Revolution, a world transformed by machinery, steam, and a new kind of human ambition. The air is no longer just filled with the scent of wood smoke and refuse, but with the heavy, metallic smell of industry. The rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer is replaced by the incessant, thunderous rhythm of 1,000 machines working in unison. It's a world of unprecedented progress, but it comes with a new and terrifying problem. A population boom that is straining the limits of sanitation and a water supply that is, to put it mildly, a city-sized, really gross cocktail, as the memory of the Nile's warm, silt-rich water fades. A new sensation washes over you, the crisp, cool air of the Italian countryside. The rhythmic hum of a bustling city in the distance begins to grow louder, a vibrant, energetic counterpoint to the quiet solitude of the desert. You are no longer a laborer by the river, but a citizen of the Roman Empire, a person living in a world of unprecedented scale and ambition. The Egyptians built their civilization on a single, mighty river, learning to tame its floods. The Romans, however, decided to bring the water to them, not just in a pot or a basin, but across miles of undulating landscape, through mountains and over valleys. Your world has gone from a small, local struggle to an empire-wide marvel of engineering. You're living in an urban center, a place where people are packed in so tightly you can practically hear your neighbor's thoughts. The old communal well, the source of your medieval worries, is a relic of a bygone era. Now, water comes from a large, open-air river that flows through the very heart of the city. A river that also, unfortunately, serves as the city's sewer. It is a slow-moving, dark ribbon of liquid that is a literal visual representation of everything wrong with your new world. The diseases that once swept through small towns now rage through these massive cities like wildfire. And everyone knows, with a kind of grim certainty, that the source is the water. The old solutions boiling a pot here, drinking a little beer there are no longer enough. The problem is too big, too complex, and too deeply ingrained in the very fabric of city life. You stand on a hill overlooking the city of Rome, and your eyes follow a magnificent sight. It's a series of arches, a long, elegant stone snake winding its way across the landscape, carrying not soldiers or merchants, but life itself. This is an aqueduct, a word that probably sounds more technical than it felt to the people who saw it every day. It was a bridge for water, a channel of pure, cold mountain water that was a testament to the ingenuity and power of the empire. You can hear the gentle murmur of the water as it flows in the covered channel above, a sound that is both peaceful and awe-inspiring. It's a sound that promises a clean drink, a warm bath, and a life free from the constant fear of a murky, disease-ridden river. This is where a new kind of hero emerges, not a pharaoh or a philosopher, but an engineer and a man with a plan. The common historical fact is that the first modern, large-scale water treatment plant was created in the early 19th century, in Paisley, Scotland. A man named Robert Thom built the first slow sand filter, a design that was revolutionary in its simplicity and its sheer scale. Later, in London, a man named James Simpson built a similar filter for the Chelsea Waterworks Company. You're standing by one of these new, monumental structures. It's a series of large, shallow pools, each filled with layers of sand, gravel, and stone. It looks like a beach that has been carefully, meticulously constructed. The muddy, polluted water from the river is pumped into one end, and you watch as it slowly, imperceptibly, seeps through the layers. It's a process of profound patience, an act of faith in the simple power of sand and gravity. It's a direct callback to that small charcoal and sand filter you built in your old village life, but scaled up to a size that could serve an entire city. This isn't just about making water safe for a family, it's about making it safe for tens of thousands of people. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes the simplest, most ancient solutions are the best. You just have to make them bigger. The Romans understood that for an empire to thrive, its cities had to be healthy. The common historical fact is that the Roman aqueducts were not just about providing drinking water, they were about public health on a scale never before seen. The aqueducts fed not only the public fountains, where you could fill your daily jugs, but also the public baths, the latrines, and the private homes of the wealthy. The public baths, in particular, were a cornerstone of Roman social life. Imagine a place where you could go not just to get clean, but to socialize, to exercise, to read, to do business. The baths were the community centers of their day, and they were all powered by the steady, reliable flow of water from the aqueducts. You can almost feel the warm, humid air of the caldarium, the hot room, and smell the faint scent of scented oils and steam. This wasn't just a luxury, it was a public service that kept the population healthy and happy. It was a clever way to keep the peace, too. It's a bit like giving everyone free Wi-Fi and saying, hey, look at all this amazing stuff we're building. So don't worry about the fact that we're a totalitarian state. The most fascinating and obscure detail about these first filters was the public's reaction. The filtered water, you see, was so much clearer and tasted so different from the murky, familiar water everyone was used to, that people were suspicious of it. The water was so free of sediment and taste that they didn't trust it. They had been drinking river water or small beer their entire lives, and this new, clean water felt alien. It was a new experience for their senses, a foreign liquid that didn't taste of the earth or the river. You can almost hear the conversation in the pub. You hear about that new water from the city, it tastes like nothing. It's unnatural. People were probably worried the filter was going to turn them into, I don't know, a clam. But over time, as the water from the filter began to correlate with a drop in disease and a general improvement in public health, the skepticism faded. The clear, tasteless water, once a source of suspicion, became a symbol of progress, a mark of a civilized city. It's the kind of thing that makes you want to laugh. This modern fear of something being too clean. But where did all this water come from? The obscure detail is that the Romans were obsessed with the quality of their water. They didn't just grab it from any old stream. They sent engineers, known as equerri, out into the countryside to find the cleanest, purest sources, usually from natural springs or high-altitude streams far from the pollution of the city. These engineers were like a combination of a modern-day hydrologist and a geological detective. They would taste the water, check its clarity, and even examine the people who lived near the source to see if they were healthy. This wasn't just about finding a source, it was about finding the right source. A source of water that was not only abundant but also clean by nature. They knew, even without the modern understanding of germs, that water from a clear mountain spring was better for you than water from a slow-moving river. This was their first and most important step in purification source control. If you start with clean water, you don't have to do as much to make it safe. It's a simple truth, but it's one that eluded many cultures before and after them. But for all its brilliance, there's still a crucial academic debate. Historians still debate whether the widespread adoption of filtration was a direct result of a new scientific understanding of germs, or if it was simply a pragmatic response to a pressing social problem. John Snow's famous discovery linking cholera to a contaminated water pump in London was still a few decades away. So, the engineers who built these filters didn't know that they were killing off microscopic bacteria and viruses. They were simply observing a pattern dirty water makes people sick, and filtering it makes them less sick. Was this a truly scientific revolution, or a brilliant, and lucky, act of practical problem solving? The truth is likely a mix of both. The need was so great, the problem so obvious, that a solution, any solution, was a welcome relief. It's the kind of moment in history where a good idea, even if its fundamental principles aren't fully understood, can change the world. It was an intellectual blind leap of faith that paid off in a huge way. The water, once sourced, was a valuable commodity. But how did they move it so far? They didn't have pumps. Remember, they relied entirely on gravity. The genius of the aqueducts was in their subtle, almost imperceptible downhill slope. The channels, or spicus, were designed to drop just a few inches for every 100 feet. A gradient so gentle it would take an engineer with a level and a serious case of OCD to get it right. It's a classic example of they don't make them like they used to. The water would flow constantly, day and night, a liquid conveyor belt bringing life to the city. And for all their grandeur, many of these aqueducts were not the grand, arched bridges you see in pictures. Most of the aqueducts were actually buried underground, a practical and clever solution that protected the water from sun, debris, and, most importantly, enemy attacks. It's the kind of thing that makes you think, these guys were seriously smart. You have to hand it to them. They did not mess around when it came to their infrastructure. You stand by the river, the acrid scent of the polluted water, a constant reminder of the city's problems. But now you have hope. You turn your gaze to the vast, man-made pools of sand and gravel, a quiet, reassuring presence on the edge of the city. You see the clean water trickling out the other end, a clear, beautiful stream that is a promise of a better future. It's a quiet, humbling moment. All the lost knowledge of the Roman aqueducts, all the philosophical insights of the Greeks, all the practical wisdom of your ancestors, it all led to this. To a few massive pools of sand and gravel, a simple, elegant solution to a global problem. It's the moment when individual acts of purification become a collective, public responsibility. It's the dawn of modern public health, and you're standing right there at the beginning. Once the water reached the city, it wasn't just dumped into the streets. It was distributed through a network of lead pipes and public fountains. And this is where we run into a fascinating academic debate. Historians still debate whether the Roman use of lead pipes contributed to widespread lead poisoning in the populace. The pipes, called fistulae, were made of lead, and the water was acidic enough to leach some of the metal into the drinking supply. There are arguments on both sides. Some say that the constant flow of water and the natural buildup of mineral deposits on the inside of the pipes mitigated the effects. Others argue that the lead poisoning was a slow, cumulative problem, one that affected the health and mental acuity of the Roman elite who had more access to piped water than the average person and may have contributed to the eventual decline of the empire. It's a quiet, historical mystery, a dark cloud hanging over one of history's most brilliant achievements. The water was clean, but was the delivery system a ticking time bomb? It's a sobering thought, a reminder that every technological advance has a potential downside. As the sun begins to set, casting a hazy orange light on the smoking chimneys and the quiet filtration pools, you can feel a sense of peace settling in. The water in your jug is not from a dirty well or a polluted river. It's from a monumental sand filter, a testament to what humanity can achieve when it works together. You're no longer just a survivor, you're a citizen of a city that is finally, slowly, learning how to take care of itself. And for tonight, you can rest easy, knowing that the water you drink is not just clean, it is a triumph of collective human will. But for the average Roman, The reality was a world of clean, abundant water. You, as a citizen, would start your day at a public fountain, a massive, ornate structure of marble and bronze, where a spout of cool, clear water flowed constantly. The sound of the splashing water is a constant background noise in the city, a sound that is both calming and reassuring. You fill your clay jug, the weight of familiar comfort in your hands, and head home to start your day. This is the simple pleasure, the daily ritual that was made possible by the grand vision and relentless hard work of thousands of engineers and laborers. It's a far cry from scooping murky water from a river and waiting for it to settle. This is a world where clean water is a right, not a privilege, a public utility that binds the city together. The sight of the great, methodical sand filters, a testament to human will, slowly blurs at the edges. The industrial smoke and the frantic pace of the city recede, and you are no longer in the past. You are here now, in your own time. A world where clean water is a given, a quiet miracle that happens every time you turn on a faucet. The journey you've taken, from the muddy riverbank to the Roman Empire and the bustling industrial city, was a path to this very moment. It was a story of problem and solution, of a slow and steady march toward a life free from the constant, low-level anxiety of a dirty drink. The empire's thirst was a force of nature, a relentless demand for more, and the aqueducts were the answer. They were the veins and arteries of the empire, carrying not just water, but the lifeblood of civilization. They were the ultimate expression of the Roman ethos that, with enough engineering, enough will, and enough manpower, any problem could be solved, even the problem of a dry city in a dry land. They were a triumph of human ingenuity over the limitations of nature. And as you walk through the crowded, vibrant streets, you see the proof everywhere. You see the public fountains, the great baths, the clean streets, all flowing with the same cool, clear water that started its journey miles and miles away, high in the hills. The water is a whisper of the power of the empire, a quiet promise that everything is in its right place. It's a reminder that even the simplest things, a drink of water, can be a symbol of greatness. You stand in your kitchen, a glass of crystal clear, cool water in your hand. The liquid is tasteless, odorless, and completely transparent. The very things that once made people suspicious of the new filters are now the hallmarks of a good drink. You're a citizen of a city that has, over centuries, perfected the art of water purification. The infrastructure is a silent, unseen network of pipes, pumps, and treatment plants. A modern marvel that is so integrated into your life that you don't even think about it. But the principles you now realize are ancient. Every step in our modern water treatment process is a callback to an ancient wisdom you've already seen. As you drift off it, you can almost hear the rhythmic splashing of a public fountain, a sound that has echoed through the ages. It's a sound that says, everything is okay. The water is flowing. The city is safe. You don't have to worry about building a fire or leaving a jar in the sun. The Romans, with their genius and their ambition, have done it for you. And the gift of that clean, cool water is a legacy that still runs through the veins of our own modern world. You are a small part of a grand experiment. A citizen of an empire that believed that a clean body and a clean city were the foundation of a great civilization. And for tonight, you can rest easy, knowing that your thirst, and the thirst of an empire, has been quenched. The common historical fact is that the final, definitive victory over waterborne diseases in the modern era came with the advent of chemical disinfection, specifically with the widespread use of chlorine. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, scientists finally developed a theory of germs, the idea that invisible organisms were the cause of illness. This intellectual breakthrough gave the engineers and public health officials the final piece of the puzzle. They now knew why dirty water was dangerous, and they had a new weapon to fight it: chlorination. The process of adding a small, controlled amount of chlorine to water was the perfect solution. It was a cheap, effective, and scalable way to kill off the remaining bacteria and viruses that even the most advanced filters couldn't catch. It was the scientific proof of all the boiling, all the filtering, all the spiritual practices of the past. It was the final nail in the coffin of cholera, typhoid, and a dozen other diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. It's the reason why you can turn on a tap and not have to think twice. The echoes of Roman aqueducts and the cool splash of their fountains slowly fade, replaced by a softer, more philosophical hum. You find yourself drifting away from the world of brute force engineering and into a land of thought, of logic, of a different kind of ambition. You are now in ancient Greece, a land of marble temples, olive groves, and the sharp, salty tang of the Aegean Sea. The Roman obsession was with scale and power, with bending nature to their will. The Greeks, however, were more concerned with understanding it. They were looking for the why behind the what, and their relationship with water was no exception. It's a subtle but profound shift. The Romans built the perfect machine for delivering water. The Greeks tried to figure out what perfect water even was. But for all its brilliance, the introduction of chlorine was not without its problems. This is the obscure detail that most people have forgotten. Early chlorination efforts were often met with public resistance and outrage. The water had a distinct, pungent taste and smell, a chemical sharpness that was utterly foreign to people who were used to water tasting like dirt, or minerals, or beer. The first time a city chlorinated its water supply, people complained bitterly. They said it was unnatural, that it tasted like medicine, that it was a government conspiracy. It's almost comical when you think about it. People had spent 100 years complaining about dirty water, and then when they were given clean, safe water, they complained about that too. You can almost hear the conversation in a turn-of-the-century saloon. This water's all wrong. Mate, it tastes like a swimming pool. I'll stick to the small beer, thank you very much. The human fear of the new, of the unknown, is a funny thing. You are a student, a philosopher, or a healer in the city of Kos, a small island where the air is fragrant with herbs and the sun is warm on your skin. You've heard the stories of the Roman aqueducts. They're the talk of the Mediterranean world. But here, the approach is different. There are no massive stone channels stretching for miles. Instead, the focus is on a more personal, a more intimate relationship with the water. The Greeks believed that water was one of the 4 essential elements, along with earth, air, and fire. They knew it was vital for life, but they also believed it had a direct and profound effect on the balance of the body. To them, a healthy body was one in a state of harmony, and the water you drank was a major part of maintaining that harmony. Today, your water treatment plant uses a series of steps that are an evolution of everything you've seen. First, the water is held in large basins, just like the Egyptians' reservoirs, to allow the heavier particles to settle out. That's decantation. Then, they use chemicals like alum, just like the Egyptians, to clump the remaining particles together so they sink to the bottom. That's coagulation. The water is then run through a series of filters, often using sand and charcoal. A direct evolution of the filters you built in your village and the monumental slow sand filters of the Industrial Revolution. And finally, the water is disinfected with a small amount of chlorine, the final crucial step that ensures every last invisible organism is gone. It's like the world's most complicated and successful cooking recipe, one that has been perfected over thousands of years by countless people, all working together without even knowing it. The common historical fact is that the Greeks, and in particular the famous physician Hippocrates, were among the first to systematically link clean water with good health. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, wrote extensively about the importance of water. He advised his students and patients to be mindful of where their water came from, to seek out springs and wells that were pure and clear, and to avoid stagnant or marshy water at all costs. He knew, through simple observation, that people who drank bad water were more likely to get sick. He wasn't thinking about germs. Of course, that's a much later development, but he was thinking about a kind of holistic health. He believed that the qualities of the water, its taste, its smell, its temperature, all contributed to the overall health of the person drinking it. This was the birth of public health as a philosophical concept. The idea that a healthy city started not with a monumental aqueduct, but with a simple, conscious choice. You can almost hear him, a wise old man with a long beard, lecturing to his students, a simple pot of water on the table between them, saying, "As a physician, you must consider the water, for it is one of the pillars of life. Now for the academic debate." Historians still debate which single invention was the most important in the battle against waterborne disease. Was it the slow sand filters, which removed the majority of the harmful organisms? Was it the discovery of germ theory, which gave us the crucial understanding of the problem? Or was it the widespread use of chlorination, which provided the final preventative solution? The answer, of course, is a little bit of everything. It's a beautiful but messy and complex story, a tapestry woven from the threads of ancient wisdom, intellectual curiosity, and practical problem solving. There was no single hero, no single aha moment. It was a slow, collective journey of millions of people, each adding a small piece to the puzzle. But how did he suggest you get this pure water if a clean source wasn't available? This is where the obscure detail comes in. Hippocrates created a tool that has come to be known as the Hippocratic sleeve. It was a simple cloth bag, made of a fine, tightly woven linen. You would take a pot of river water, the cloudy, murky stuff, and pour it into the bag, which was suspended over another pot. The water would slowly filter through the cloth, leaving behind the visible sediments and a good deal of the smaller particles. This was an evolution of the filtering you did in your own village, but with a specific medical purpose. It wasn't just to make the water taste better. It was to remove the impurities that Hippocrates believed were the source of illness. It was a tangible, practical solution born from a philosophical insight. It's the kind of ingenious, low-tech solution that you'd expect from a civilization that invented democracy and geometry. You can almost see the gears turning in your head. Wait, a sock. You're telling me the father of modern medicine invented a giant tea bag for water? And, well, yeah, pretty much. But it worked. So, as you take a sip of your water, you're drinking a legacy. You're tasting the ingenuity of a shepherd who boiled water over a fire. You're drinking the wisdom of the Egyptians who used alum and large reservoirs. You're consuming the grand ambition of the Romans and their aqueducts. You're taking in the philosophical insight of the Greeks who connected clean water to a healthy body, the spiritual wellness of the Indians with their copper pots, and the desperate cleverness of the medieval brewer. You're a beneficiary of a story that is as old as humanity itself. A story that is a testament to our ability to learn, to adapt, and to overcome. It's a quiet miracle, one that is so common we don't even notice it. Hippocrates and his followers were also ahead of their time in another way. They understood the importance of boiling water, not just for purification, but as a way to make it lighter and easier to digest. They believed that boiling water changed its very nature, making it less heavy on the stomach and more beneficial to the body's internal humors. This was a sophisticated, if not entirely scientific, understanding of how the body interacts with the outside world. It was a step away from blind faith and toward a more reasoned approach to health. They were observing, documenting, and trying to find the logical connections between cause and effect. It's the kind of slow, methodical thinking that laid the groundwork for all of science and medicine that came after. They didn't just accept that dirty water made you sick. They asked why, and they tried to come up with a solution. The lights in the room are dimming now, and the soft hum of the fan fills the air. The story is over, and your journey through time is complete. The distant sound of a car on the street, the gentle sigh of the wind through the trees outside your window. These are the sounds of your world, a world made better by the hard-won wisdom of your ancestors. The water is clean, your body is at peace, and the constant ancient fear of a murky, dirty sip is just a distant echo. All that's left to do is let go, to let the peacefulness of the moment wash over you, and to let your mind drift away into a deep, restful sleep. Now, for the academic debate. Historians still debate whether the Greek focus on water and health was a truly scientific endeavor or a kind of elegant, philosophical guesswork. Was Hippocrates a scientist, or was he a philosopher whose observations just happened to be correct? The Hippocratic writings are full of observations about diet, exercise, and environment, and water is just one part of this larger puzzle. They lacked the tools to see bacteria and viruses, so their understanding was based on a kind of macro observation. They saw a pattern: people get sick when they drink from a swamp, and they made a rule. They didn't understand the invisible cause, but they did understand the visible effect. Some argue that this lack of a microscopic understanding means their science was just a series of lucky guesses. Others contend that this is the very essence of early science, finding patterns in the chaos of the world and creating rules to live by. It's a chicken and egg kind of question. A quiet little paradox in the history of medicine. Did they stumble into truth? Or did they reason their way there? We'll never really know for sure.